Again, just making sure there are no members from the Lviv team here, right? Great. I see them joining. Just to confirm, Lviv, all your team members are here now?
Good afternoon. Yes, me and my colleague, yes.
Awesome. Great. I'm so sorry for that delay. But yes, now we can start with the opening session. So first, just the introduction. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hague Tournament 2021. My name is Tsira Karmazanashvili, and I'll be hosting today's session together with my timekeeper, Ms. Wendy Marielke. The session will run for a total of 40 minutes. You will have a notification of 1 minute left for your opening speeches and 20 seconds left for your arguments in the rebuttal phases. Right. So both me and the timekeeper will be keeping time just to make sure that there is more accuracy. A few things to note before we actually start with the debate. Firstly, we would like to ask everyone to kindly please turn off any additional electronic devices that you might be having, except for the one that you're using to access the session. Please also make sure that all apps and messages are closed. And should you run into any technical difficulties or get disconnected and are unable to rejoin, your timing will be paused, but you should please then contact one of the organizing committee members. And you can also contact me via the chat function here in the WebEx function. Lastly, also, if you are not speaking, this is for both the judges and the team members, please do switch off your camera just for the time so that we get better connection for the people that are speaking. Right. So today's topic is that participative democracies, like that of Switzerland and its referenda, is the future model for democracy around the world. Now, I would just like to share my screen so that we can choose the proposition and opposition side. Can you just confirm when you see it?
Yes.
Great. So what I'll do is I've chosen Poiters University with a random selector. So whichever one the computer chooses, the other team will then take the opposite side. So Poiters University is con, therefore Lviv will be proposition. Your 5 minutes preparation time will start now.
I'm sorry, the Ukrainian Catholic team actually is against the position, yes? The con. The pro for the position, yeah?
Yes, I will write it right now into the chat function, but Poiters is con.
Thanks.
Yes. And then, yes, okay. I see there is a lot of confusion in the chat. I just want to confirm. So Lviv will be prop, right? And then Poiters will be opposing the motion. I'll just add 30 seconds for your time for that. But yes. Right. So your preparation time is now over. We would now like to ask the first team, the proposing team, to start with their opening speeches.
Okay, do you hear me? Well,
yes, we do.
Okay. So, good afternoon, dear colleagues, honorable judges. My name is Dmytro, and together with my colleague Serhii, it's a pleasure for us to be here presenting our position. And my speech will include the explanation of the importance of the participative democracy, reasons why and how should we do it, and three main arguments in favor of our position. But before I begin, I'd like to quote the founder father of the American democracy, Abraham Lincoln. Democracy is the government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And to maintain democracy is one of the greater challenges of the 21st century. And we should give people their local tools to be heard. So firstly, the people are the only source of the all power. And in every current country which is considering themselves as democratic, only people have the rights to decide how to live, which political vector to choose, or which rule to set. So undoubtedly, people have a primacy of power over all politicians, over all political bodies and institutions. And we have no authority to limit this right, because every citizen of the state should have a possibility to say their views and positions. Secondly, it is always better to ask what people think rather than dispute inside some of governmental very close circle and do it for nothing. For example, in 1975, in the Labour Party of the UK this party was on the verge of destruction just because there were no one common position concerning the membership in the EU. However, only a referendum helped them to avoid huge governmental conflict and crisis. And as you know, 2 years ago, people again decided their destiny in the UA. And that is real democracy. And such instruments as referendums teach people to be responsible for their positions, for their motherland, and for all political system. If you have a right to make a decision, then you have a duty to be responsible for those consequences that this decision can lead to. In such cases, people become more aware of their actions and actually at all actions of all governmental system. Last but not least is that when people voted for a certain party, they some kind of delegated mandate of power to politicians. However, they voted for them based on the party's program. But in case when there is no, there is a serious issue which should be dealt with, and the party has not common position concerning it. So people should solve it through the referendum. And I would like to add that all huge changes of the 21st and 20th century were made by referendum. Actually, my native Ukraine became independent through referendum. Actually, all 15 post-Soviet countries became independent through referendum. Montenegro became independent in 2006. Scotland became independent in 2014. A lot of constitutions were enacted through referendum. So let's give to the people their power. Thank you.
Right. Thank you for that speech. We will now have the opposing side come with their opening speech.
Hello, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, you are.
Honorable judges, distinguished colleagues, my name is Leona, and with my colleagues Tsira and Josepha, we want to defend the idea today that participative democracy is not the future model of democracy around the world. First, because representation is always needed to sustain a stable political system. Second, because although such a model of democracy would give a voice to people who normally aren't involved in any political process, it can easily be abused by a tyranny of the majority, meaning people who serve their own self-interest and ideologies. Thirdly, because inequalities in levels of education would lessen the effectivity of such a system. Now, first of all, representation is always needed to maintain a stable political system. The supposed universality of the participative system attracts, but in reality, the representative element cannot be completely excluded. Even in its most accomplished form, it cannot escape some type of representation, as show citizens' assemblies. Secondly, elected representatives act in the interest of the public good. However, the public good is not the sum of individual interests, which is what referendums are. And if the making of decisions shifts to local bodies, it will allow individuals and groups to create laws and policies that directly address their interests, thus forming elites capable of controlling the participative system. It would most likely lead to a tyranny of the majority. People also are often emotionally driven, and there is a reason that institutions are needed to make a political system work, because they are able to put a distance that is needed to make rational decisions. And while this system can give a voice to people who normally are shut out of the political process, participative democracy can be easily abused by those who advocate in favor of hate and discrimination. And we still live in a world, unfortunately, where discriminations, racism, and xenophobia are very present. For example, in 2009, Switzerland held a vote that banned the construction of further minarets on mosques, which shows, again, xenophobia. A participative democracy can also finally only benefit us if we can count on an educated electorate to act in the interest of the public good. But social and economic inequality consequently leads to different levels of education. The OECD found that 736 million people around the world still live in extreme poverty. And that's just statistics for extreme poverty. People can't properly inform or educate themselves when they're struggling to make ends meet. And this difference in education becomes especially evident when public opinion is easily manipulated by misleading headlines and the spread of misinformation. Big countries like the USA under Trump's administration with Fox News or Russia benefit from this and twist the truth to gain more legitimacy or to rewrite history in their favor. We could also argue that when it comes to governing, the average citizen is not equipped to lead. Most citizens do not understand how basic democratic institutions and public administrations work. Whereas elected representatives have the skill and competence required because it's their day job. Implementing such a model of democracy would imply a tremendous amount of reforms, especially regarding the higher education system, to make sure it's effectively accessible to everyone and to reduce inequalities. And that just doesn't seem to be a priority for states. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much for that speech. That concludes the opening speeches. We now move to the rebuttal phase. For that, we would like to ask the first proposing team to come with their first argument.
You're not audible, though.
Pardon me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Now we can.
Thank you. Good afternoon again. My name is Serhii Andruschenko, and I would like to show you that actually the representative participatory democracy has several actually grounds. First of all, it goes to the reliable, responsible way of thinking, since citizens became a participants of the decision-making process. It leads us to actually in-depth understanding of the causal link between certain decisions and its consequences for the country. It would lead us to more responsible way of dealing in the country. Actually, it also lowering the level of the corruption due to the decreasing number of representatives. Actually, the opposite council mentioned that due to such actually democracy, we have a trouble with manipulating and self-interest. However, at this point, we have more troubles with corruption and self-interest of representatives, whose actually one voice has more value than one voice of ordinary citizens. Actually, our position is that this participative, this model of democracy leads us to the new form of society, and actually we agree that it could not be devoted actually to the whole point, whole the questions. However, we would like to emphasize that only part of the questions, most important, should go to the citizens, and some minor questions should go to the local authorities in order to lower the number of such referenda, to save time and to save budget. Thank you.
Right, thank you for that. Now we will move to the first argument from the con side.
Hello, am I audible and visible?
Yes.
Yes, you are.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Tsira, and along with my colleagues, I will be trying to defend the position that participatory democracy cannot be the future of the world. First of all, I would like to point out that responsible thinking is a necessity under any political regime, because ultimately every single type of democracy functions on citizen participation. Secondly, I would like to point out as well that indeed Ukraine, along with all post-Soviet countries, including my native Georgia, became independent through referendums. This was interesting since none of us were a participatory democracy at those times, indicating that referendums are still possible under any regime without participatory democracy, which is idealist at best, since we need to keep in mind that countries vary in size and population count, which affects the effectiveness of participatory democracy. Indeed, the example of Switzerland, for example, it may function well under participatory democracy, but when we use Switzerland as an example, we have to keep in mind its size and population, which is relatively small, 8 million to be exact. And the amount of people there allows for participatory democracy to function and work well. However, if we consider the population size of countries like India, China, United States, it becomes evident that applying this regime, participatory democracy there, would be impossible if we take into consideration the economic and social inequality resulting in varied levels of education that my colleague mentioned already in her speech, which is why we have the idea that this model of democracy cannot be the future of the world if we ought to preserve society's well-being. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much.
Interject?
Yes, sure. Who is speaking right now?
Me. Can I just confirm it's with Mr. Jesus de Lima that he was able to hear the argument from Poitiers?
Yes. There was some difficulties every now and then, but I could get a good sample. Yeah.
Okay, so you think it was enough?
Yes, it was enough.
Okay, thank you.
Right, thank you for that. Yes, then we'll move now to the second arguments from the proposing side. Yes.
Thank you, Tsira. And actually, my condolences about all this so-called referendum. Actually, here in Ukraine, we have the same problem with so-called referendum in Crimea, with so-called referendum in Donetsk People's and Lugansk People's Republic. However, we are not talking today about this so-called referendums. We are talking about a real instrument, which is with all of these formalities and which is a lawful tool of law. Talking about that election, that referendums cost a lot of money. However, the common elections cost the same as referendum. Moreover, we can make use modern technologies to avoid such losses. And you emphasize in your introduction lots of attention on incompetence of common people. However, that they are not educated and they are not incompetent, and I think it's abusive to hear that that your own citizens are not able to share their positions. Why do you take bureaucratic positions and put them over common teachers, doctors, and students? Are they better? I think no. And talking about terrorism of majority, and I would like to ask you, what is the difference between enacting law in the parliament by majority and enacting it by majority of the people? However, and the only way to avoid living in authoritarian is to use the tools of direct democracy. To grant becoming totalitarian countries, there always should be a possibility to vote and show your position. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Now we will move to the second arguments from the opposing side. Oh, sorry, for.
Hello again, everyone. Am I audible and visible?
You are audible, but not visible.
Okay,
Yes,
I'll try to restart my video. What about now?
Yes, you are audible and visible.
Okay, thank you. I would like to start. Thank you to the speaker for his arguments and rebuttals. I would like to reaffirm that in no way am I insulting or trying to denounce any citizen's education level. Our argument was frankly trying to reaffirm that if we take into consideration the economic and social inequality in people, it becomes evident that direct participatory democracy under this regime and in this reality is idealist and frankly can become dangerous because despite the existence of international organizations, peace treaties, and so on, powerful states still pose threats to other countries and some states that are targeted by such countries are under direct influence of targeted spread of propaganda and misinformation that's used to disrupt their internal affairs. For example, the Caucasus region and Russia, where the latter continuously meddles in the internal affairs of the Caucasian states to twist the public opinion in a way that would fit its wishes. Case in point, when Facebook shut down thousands of fake accounts in Georgia in 2020, that were all operated from Russia, and they were spreading propaganda about different topics. And this does not only happen in the neighboring states. We have a confirmed case of interference in national elections in the US in 2016, also by Russia. And I know that this is not news to you, being from Ukraine, that they use every single method they have at their use to disrupt internal affairs in neighboring states, which could become dangerous, and considering that public opinion can be so easily swayed and manipulated through media to this day, which is why we believe that participatory democracy today can end up harming a lot of minority groups and the states themselves in the long run, because it's so idealistic. Thank you.
Thank you so much. With that, we move then to the final arguments from the proposing side.
Thank you, colleagues, for your submission. Actually, the other party mentions that poverty and low education could be an obstacle during the process of moving to that participative democracy. However, we would like to emphasize that actually such incorporating of all social actually kinds of people would lead us to consider that everyone would be well informed about the political situation in its country, and it would lead to more responsible consequences in the country. We would like to, for example, in Switzerland, actually people voted that against decreasing the taxes due to their position, because they actually were informed about what were actually they knew what would be the causal link between the decreasing of taxes and consequences to their country. We would like also to mention that actually participative democracy, it's new, it's a modern way of dealing democracy actually in the world, and it would definitely do not cost so much actually money as it could be imagined. For example, in USA, one elective day costs about $500 or $700 million. And if we are talking about participative democracy as our future modern democracy, we would definitely adapt it to the actually modern world, and probably in the online world or something like this. And finally, we would like to mention that it's much more harder to manipulate a lot of actually a mass of people instead of some kind of representatives which could be actually involved in fraud or something like this. So our position is that we should deliver the power to our citizens. However, we should actually increase the level of education. It's not a 1 year, it's not a 2-year process, but it's a long-term purpose, but it's a better idea to deliver the power to the citizens. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. And now we will have the final argument for the debate, with the last argument from the con side.
Am I audible and visible?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I'm glad that the proposition team speaks about Switzerland, because as my colleague Leona said, I want just to remind that this is a tiny country. I think this could work in tiny countries, but I'm not sure that in China or in USA or even in France it could work, because their population is so bigger than in Switzerland. And to conclude on the topic, participative democracy, like Switzerland and its referenda, as you said, is the future model of democracy around the world. My colleagues and I affirm that participative democracy cannot be the future of actual democracies, because being pragmatic, referendums can't answer to complex questions. Citizens must inform themselves a lot on the question before, and we doubt that every citizen will take this time. This is what leads us to the main argument my colleagues explained, the different levels of education between citizens. Even Athenians knew that to be a good citizen in participative democracy, that citizen needs a strong education and the same as everyone. But to acquire this level of education, it takes a lot of time, and today citizens can't have this time because they work. Being a good citizen in participative democracy induces an economic loss, while today's democracies are relying on productivity. Even if we want to thank the team members of Proposition to highlight that participative democracy could be the future democratic model, these pragmatic arguments prove that this just could stay theoretical. Thank you.
All right. So that concludes the debate session for today. Thank you so much for your speech and congratulations for completing the tournament or the session. Now I would like to ask our judge that is present here today, Mr. Jamie, to just give us some feedback to the teams. And I would also like to invite all the team members to then switch on their cameras so that it is more interactive.
So let me just put my microphone correctly. I hope you can all hear me. Can you all hear me? That's excellent. So first I want to congratulate you for taking part on this. I really realized you all prepared your arguments and it is some good research, which is a wonderful thing. But I would like to point some points of improvement, which I think is a general feedback for both the Ukrainian team and the team from France. So firstly, I would say that when we have a lot of content and we have a limited amount of time, the tendency to speak really, really fast. So I won't say everything I want to say because it's going to run out of time. And then for people who are listening, it's somewhat difficult to follow your reasoning, especially in your case, because your reasoning was good. And I'm trying to get what they're saying, but he's speeding so fast, I cannot follow them. That's number one. Number two, I would like to say something about pathos, right? Because we talk about creating an argument in the Aristotelian sense. So we will have the logos, we will have the logic of what we're saying. We're going to bring about a reasoning to convince people with logic. But you also make that very powerful by talking about values. And I see that both teams talked about values, but I would like to see for the future, for you to bring about values that you have in common. That's usually the way you build this. So if I am from the French team, I would say my Ukrainian counterpart absolutely believes in morality or hard work, and therefore I invite them to go and then I take them along the way. I think that's a good thing. That was missing a little bit. And finally, the emotions, I think the pathos would be exactly the same as the ethos. It's good to say, I feel offended, or you don't feel offended, or something like that. That's fine. That's okay. But you don't go very far that way. So I would probably go, I would do it. I would get an example that moves the opposition. So if I'm from the French team, I would probably say about a very important event for the Ukrainian history. And then I would, of course, win them over by showing that, and they would do the opposite. But finally, I want to say, that I think you did well, generally. I see talent and promise, so keep honing those skills, and thank you for joining.
Thank you for your feedback. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Right, yes, thank you so much for taking time, Mr. Jamie, to be here and for your feedback. With that, the session is concluded. I just want to remind the participants that the results will be processed during the weekend, and we will then publish it by Monday through emails. And you will get the results then. But yes, thank you and have a great evening. Oh, I see Mr. Jimmy wanted to say something.
Yes, Mirokoro, can I talk to you just right after this session? Are you on Microsoft Teams?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll find you there. Okay, lovely.
Okay. But yes, thank you so much for joining and have a great evening further, guys.
Thank you, actually, colleagues. It was a great pleading. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good
Bye,
evening.
guys. Enjoy your weekend.
Good evening. You too.